My parents sold my project for $10,000. 3 years later, it was worth $1 billion, and what I did when they begged for shares shocked everyone. I am Cassandra Wilson, and at 28, I watched my life crumble when my father uttered 6 devastating words: "We sold your silly patent for 10,000. The algorithm I had poured my soul into for years, gone with a single signature. I never imagined my own parents would betray me like that. Even less could I have predicted that 3 years later, that same technology would be valued at $1 billion. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home outside Seattle, I always felt like an anomaly in my family. My earliest memories involved dismantling household electronics while other kids played with dolls. By 3rd grade, I was winning science fairs with projects that made teachers raise their eyebrows in disbelief. "Are you sure your parents helped you with this?" Mrs. Hicks asked when I presented my solar-powered water filtration system at age 9. I remember shaking my head and feeling a strange mix of pride and sadness. My parents had not helped. They had barely noticed. My father, Richard Wilson, worked as a sales manager for a local furniture company. He played football in high school, and that remained the pinnacle of his life achievements, according to his stories. My mother, Karen, was an administrative assistant who spent most of her free time organizing community events and fussing over my brother Jason. Jason was 3 years older than me and embodied everything my parents valued: athletic, sociable, conventionally successful. He was quarterback of his high school team, dated the prettiest girls, and brought home trophies that my parents proudly displayed in our living room cabinet. Meanwhile, my academic certificates and science competition medals were tucked away in a drawer in my bedroom. "Nobody wants to hear about differential equations at dinner, Cassie," my mother would say whenever I tried to share my latest academic achievement. "Jason, tell us about the game on Friday." I learned early on that in our household, throwing a ball was more valuable than scientific innovation. It wasn't that they were cruel parents, just thoroughly ordinary people who couldn't understand a daughter who read physics textbooks for fun. When I was 14, I came home buzzing with excitement after my science teacher told me I had a genuine gift for computational thinking and should consider applying to specialized summer programs. "That sounds expensive," was my father's immediate response. "But Mr. Patterson said there are scholarships," I countered. My mother exchanged a look with my father. "Well, we have already committed to Jason's football camp this summer. That is our priority right now." That night, I cried silently in my bedroom, wondering why my brother's ability to throw a ball was worth more than my brain. It was the first of many disappointments, but also the moment I decided my success would have to come through self-reliance. The ultimate heartbreak came during my junior year of high school when I discovered that my parents had used my college fund to pay for Jason's elite sports training camp. He had received interest from college recruiters, and my parents were determined to secure him an athletic scholarship. "Jason has a real future in sports," my father explained when I confronted them. "You are smart enough to get academic scholarships." I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. The $10,000 they had supposedly been saving for my education was gone. That night, I made a plan. I took a weekend job at the local library and found evening work tutoring classmates in math and science. Every dollar went into a new account that only I could access. For the next 2 years, I worked relentlessly while maintaining a perfect GPA. I slept 4 hours a night, studied during lunch breaks, and sacrificed any semblance of a social life. My determination paid off when I received an acceptance letter from MIT with a partial scholarship that would cover about 70% of my tuition. When I shared the news with my parents, their reaction was predictably lukewarm. "MIT is so far away," my mother said. "Couldn't you have applied somewhere closer to home?" "What about Washington State, where Jason goes?" "This is MIT," I emphasized. "One of the best engineering schools in the world." My father glanced up from his newspaper. "Well, I hope you can afford it. We do not have money to help with that fancy school." I wanted to scream that they would have had money if they had not spent mine on Jason, but instead I just said, "I know. I have been saving." Arriving at MIT was like finally being able to breathe. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who got excited about the same things I did. Nobody looked at me strangely when I spent hours discussing algorithmic efficiency or quantum computing theories. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Alan Morgan, who would become the mentor I had always craved. He spotted me working late in the computer lab one night and paused to look at my code. "This is an interesting approach," he said, pointing to my screen. "Have you considered applying a neural network to optimize these parameters?" That casual observation led to weekly meetings where we would discuss cutting-edge computational approaches to energy problems. Professor Morgan became the first person who truly believed in my potential, not as an oddity or a disappointment, but as a legitimate innovator. Sometimes I would catch myself thinking about how proud my parents would be when I finally achieved something significant enough that even they could not dismiss it. Despite years of emotional neglect, some childish part of me still craved their approval. I fantasized about them seeing my name in scientific journals or business magazines and finally understanding that their daughter was exceptional. Little did I know that this desperate desire for parental validation would nearly destroy everything I would work to build. My junior year at MIT marked the beginning of what would eventually become my life's work. I was taking an advanced course in computational modeling for environmental systems when the idea first sparked in my mind. We were discussing the inefficiencies in renewable energy distribution, specifically how solar and wind power were often wasted during peak production times due to inadequate storage solutions. "The problem isn't generation capacity," Professor Morgan explained to our class. "It's intelligent distribution and storage optimization across variable conditions." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with potential solutions, mathematical models forming and reforming in my thoughts. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I jumped out of bed and rushed to my desk, frantically sketching algorithms and flowcharts. What if we could create an adaptive system that could predict energy needs and automatically redistribute resources in real time? For the next 2 months, I practically lived in the computational lab. My roommate, Lily Chong, would bring me sandwiches and force me to take breaks. "You're going to burn out, Cass," she warned, finding me asleep at my keyboard for the 3rd night in a row. "I'm close to something big," I insisted. "This could change how we think about energy efficiency." Lily was studying business management and had a practical mind that balanced my theoretical tendencies. "Even world-changing algorithms need their creators to be alive and functioning," she pointed out. Despite her concerns, Lily became my greatest supporter. She would listen patiently as I explained complex computational concepts, asking insightful questions that often helped me work through problems. While my parents had never bothered to understand my work, Lily made the effort despite it being outside her field. By spring semester, I had developed a preliminary algorithm that showed promising results in simulations. Professor Morgan encouraged me to pursue the research further, offering me space in his lab and connecting me with resources. "This has commercial potential," he told me after reviewing my latest results. "Have you considered filing a patent?" The thought had never occurred to me. I was focused on the problem, not the potential profit. But Professor Morgan insisted that protecting my intellectual property was crucial, especially for a young female engineer in a field dominated by large corporations and established male researchers. Around this time, I briefly dated a fellow computer science student named Eric Donovan. He was brilliant and charming, and for a few weeks, I thought I had found someone who truly understood both me and my work. Then one evening, I returned to the lab unexpectedly and found him copying my research notes. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my heart pounding. Eric's face flushed. "Just trying to understand your approach better. You're always so secretive about your methods." But I saw the flash drive in his hand and the open files on his laptop. He wasn't studying my work. He was stealing it. "Get out," I whispered, shaking with rage and betrayal. "We're done." After he left, I sat in the empty lab and cried. First my parents, now Eric. I was learning hard lessons about trust. That night, I changed all my passwords and moved my research to a secure server that Professor Morgan helped me set up. The Eric incident reinforced Professor Morgan's advice about legal protection. With his guidance, I connected with the university's legal aid program for students, which helped me navigate the complex patent application process. By the end of my senior year, my patent application for adaptive neural network system for renewable energy optimization was filed. The legal aid attorneys explained that the patent would take time to process, but that my innovation was now documented and protected. I graduated from MIT with highest honors and multiple job offers from tech companies and energy firms. However, after many late-night discussions with Lily, who had become my closest friend and unofficial business advisor, I decided to take a different path. "You could work for someone else and make good money," Lily said as we discussed my options over coffee in our favorite campus cafe, "or you could build something of your own and potentially change the world. Which sounds more like you?" She already knew the answer. I had spent my life being underestimated and overlooked. The thought of handing my innovation to a corporation that would bury it in bureaucracy or water it down for quick profits was unbearable. With Lily's help, I developed a business plan for a startup that would commercialize my algorithm. We called it CleanSync Technologies, with the tagline "Harmonizing Energy for a Sustainable Future." The plan won 2 university entrepreneurship competitions, which provided $10,000 in seed funding. Several angel investors expressed interest after my pitch at the MIT Innovation Showcase. One venture capitalist, Benjamin Rhodes, was particularly enthusiastic. "This has billion-dollar potential," he said after my presentation. "It's exactly the kind of breakthrough the clean energy sector needs." For the first time, I allowed myself to feel genuinely hopeful about the future. My work was being recognized by people who understood its value. I had a patent pending, initial funding, and interest from serious investors. That evening, I called my parents, something I rarely did since starting college. Despite years of disappointment, some part of me still wanted to share my success with them, still craved their approval. "Mom, Dad, I have amazing news," I said, unable to contain my excitement. "I've developed a new algorithm for clean energy optimization, and investors are interested in funding my startup." There was a pause on the line. "That's nice, honey," my mother finally said. "But we're actually planning Jason's wedding right now. It's going to be quite expensive. Do you think your computer thing might make money soon? We could really use some help with the costs." I felt that familiar sinking feeling in my stomach. Of course, they would find a way to make my achievement about Jason. "I have to go," I said abruptly and hung up. Despite that disappointing conversation, I decided to go home for Thanksgiving. It had been over a year since my last visit, and I wanted to discuss my business plans in person. Perhaps if they could see the investor presentations and understand the potential impact of my work, they would finally take me seriously. I had no idea that this visit would change the course of my life in ways I could never have imagined. I arrived at my parents' house the day before Thanksgiving, nervous but excited to share my plans. The house looked the same as always, meticulously maintained lawn, the same faded welcome mat, and of course, the living room shrine to Jason's athletic achievements. Nothing about me was visible in the home where I grew up. My mother greeted me with a distracted hug. "We're so busy with wedding planning," she explained, barely making eye contact. "Jason and Amber want a June ceremony at Lakeview Country Club." "That sounds nice," I said, trying to be polite. "I was hoping we could talk about my startup. I have some presentations I'd like to show you." "Your father's in his office," she replied, already turning back to her wedding magazines. "Dinner's at 6. I headed upstairs to unpack, passing my father's home office. The door was ajar, and I noticed unfamiliar paperwork spread across his desk. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked inside. The letterhead caught my attention immediately: Tech Fusion Corporation, one of the largest energy companies in the country. Why would my father have correspondence from them? Before I could investigate further, I heard his footsteps on the stairs and quickly retreated to my old bedroom. That evening at dinner, I tried to share my excitement about CleanSync Technologies. "Several investors are interested," I explained, pulling up the presentation on my tablet. "Benjamin Rhodes thinks we could secure a 7-figure seed round by spring." My father cleared his throat. "Actually, Cassandra, there's something we need to discuss regarding your patent." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. My mother suddenly became very interested in rearranging the food on her plate. What about my patent? I asked, my mouth going dry. My father straightened in his chair, adopting the same authoritative posture he used when grounding me as a teenager. We sold your silly patent for $10,000, he announced as casually as if commenting on the weather. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. You what? Tech Fusion Corporation approached us about acquiring your energy algorithm, he continued. We negotiated the best deal we could get. The room began to spin. You can't sell my patent. It's mine. I created it. I filed it. My mother finally spoke up. Remember when you had that hospital scare sophomore year? The appendicitis? You signed a power of attorney so we could make decisions while you were in surgery. Technically, it never expired. I felt physically ill as the pieces fell into place. The paperwork in my father's office. Tech Fusion. The power of attorney I'd completely forgotten about. You used a medical power of attorney to sell my intellectual property. My voice rose in disbelief. How is that even legal? We needed the money for Jason's wedding, my mother explained as if that justified everything. And honestly, Cassandra, it's just computer doodling. $10,000 is a lot for some lines of code. It's not computer doodling, I seethed. It's a revolutionary algorithm that could transform renewable energy infrastructure globally. My father waved his hand dismissively. Those tech companies always exaggerate. Besides, you can make another computer program. You're good at that stuff. I couldn't breathe. Years of work, my future, my dreams, all sold without my knowledge or consent for a fraction of its worth to pay for my brother's wedding. Where's the money? I demanded. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We've already put deposits down for the venue and catering, my mother admitted. I pushed away from the table and ran upstairs, grabbing my phone to call the only person I trusted. Lily answered on the second ring. They sold my patent, I sobbed into the phone. My parents sold it to Tech Fusion for $10,000 using an old medical power of attorney. Lily gasped. That can't be legal. We need to call a lawyer immediately. The next morning, instead of Thanksgiving dinner, I met with an attorney Lily had found who specialized in intellectual property. After reviewing the documents my parents had signed, his expression grew grim. Unfortunately, the power of attorney is valid, he explained. And while it was originally intended for medical decisions, the language is broad enough that their transfer of your patent application rights to Tech Fusion could hold up in court. So, I've lost everything, I whispered. You could challenge it, he said carefully. But litigation against a corporation like Tech Fusion would be expensive and time-consuming with no guarantee of success. And if your parents signed as your legal representatives, I left his office in a daze. Back at my parents' house, I packed my belongings while they prepared for Thanksgiving dinner as if nothing had happened. You're being dramatic, my father said when he saw me heading for the door with my suitcase. It's just a patent. You'll come up with something else. You had no right, I told him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You've taken the one thing that was truly mine. We're your parents, my mother replied. We know what's best. I walked out without looking back. Lily was waiting in a rental car at the end of the driveway. You're staying with me, she insisted, for as long as you need. In the weeks that followed, I spiraled into a deep depression. I watched helplessly as Tech Fusion announced the acquisition of a promising new energy optimization technology in press releases. My innovation, my future, stolen with a signature. I consulted 3 more attorneys, all of whom gave the same devastating assessment: challenging the sale would be a legal nightmare. The power of attorney, while ethically questionable in this context, provided my parents with legal authority. Tech Fusion had obtained the rights through seemingly proper channels, and they had an army of corporate lawyers to defend their acquisition. The investors who had been excited about CleanSync Technologies disappeared overnight when they learned I no longer owned the core intellectual property. Benjamin Rhodes, who had spoken of billion-dollar potential, wouldn't even take my calls. I'm so sorry, Cassandra, he wrote in a terse email. Without the patent, there's nothing to invest in. The worst part was the betrayal, not just the legal theft of my work, but the casual way my parents had dismissed years of my effort as computer doodling not worth protecting. They had valued a one-day wedding celebration for my brother over my entire future. As December turned to January, I could barely get out of bed. Lily covered my share of rent and gently encouraged me to seek therapy, but I felt paralyzed by loss and betrayal. Everything I had worked for was gone, and I had to start over with nothing but a broken heart and shattered trust. The first 6 months after the betrayal were the darkest of my life. I moved into Lily's spare room in Boston and barely functioned. While she went to her job at a marketing firm, I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that had led to this catastrophe. If only I had revoked that power of attorney. If only I had never gone home for Thanksgiving. If only I had been born into a family that valued me. Lily tried everything to pull me out of my depression. She scheduled consultations with more lawyers, hoping to find a legal loophole. She connected me with other engineers who had faced setbacks. She even arranged interviews for tech positions that might interest me. "You still have your brilliant mind," she reminded me. "No one can take that away." But I felt like a failure. My innovation was now being developed by Tech Fusion's team. And I had nothing to show for it except a broken heart and mounting debt. To cover my basic expenses, I took a job at a local coffee shop. I, Cassandra Wilson, MIT graduate with honors, was making lattes for business people who resembled the investors who had once been eager to fund my startup. The irony wasn't lost on me when a Tech Fusion executive stopped in one morning and I had to serve him, smiling mechanically as he discussed their revolutionary new energy system on his phone while waiting for his order. "Your algorithm is making remarkable progress," he told someone on the call. "The simulations are exceeding all expectations." I nearly dropped his cup. They were using my work, probably making modifications, but the core breakthrough, my breakthrough, was driving their success. I went to the bathroom and cried after he left. That evening, I received a text from my mother: "Jason's wedding was beautiful. Wish you could have been there. Dad and I are thinking of buying a vacation home with the money we saved. Hope your computer job is going well." They hadn't even used the money from my patent for the wedding as claimed. It had all been lies. I blocked their numbers that night. July marked my lowest point. Lily came home to find me surrounded by empty ice cream containers, unwashed for days, scrolling through Tech Fusion press releases. "This has to stop," she said firmly. "You're coming with me tomorrow." "Where?" I asked listlessly. "My company is hosting a tech mixer. You're going to shower, put on a nice outfit, and remember that you're Cassandra Wilson, brilliant engineer and innovator." I wanted to refuse, but Lily had done so much for me that I couldn't disappoint her. The next evening, I found myself in a crowded rooftop bar in downtown Boston, nursing a club soda and trying to appear interested in conversations about marketing metrics and brand engagement. That's when I overheard someone mention neural networks for energy optimization. "The current approaches are promising but fundamentally flawed," a deep voice was saying. "They're treating it as a prediction problem when it's really about adaptive response patterns." I turned to see a tall man with glasses gesturing enthusiastically to a small group. Something about his assessment resonated with me. Without thinking, I moved closer. "The flaw is more specific," I interjected. "They're using linear regression models for nonlinear phenomena. Energy consumption patterns follow chaotic mathematics, not predictive curves." The group turned to look at me, surprised by the interruption. The man with glasses studied me curiously. "Exactly right," he said. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Darius Williams, founder of Next Wave Technologies." "Cassandra Wilson," I replied. His eyes widened slightly. "Not the Cassandra Wilson who published that paper on neural adaptive algorithms for renewable energy systems?" For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of pride. "That's me. Your work is brilliant," he said. "I've cited your research in several of my papers. What are you working on now?" The question stung, but before I could formulate a vague response, Lily appeared at my side. "Cassandra is between projects at the moment," she said smoothly, but she's exploring new applications for her expertise. Darius handed me his card. I'd love to discuss potential collaboration. NextWave is developing advanced AI systems for environmental applications, and someone with your insights would be invaluable. I stared at the card in my hand. I should mention that I no longer own the patent to my algorithm. It was acquired by TechFusion. Darius waved dismissively. Patents are just one aspect of innovation. Your understanding of the underlying principles is what interests me. Call me if you'd like to continue this conversation in a more formal setting. That night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt a spark of possibility. The next morning, I called the number on Darius's card and scheduled a meeting. NextWave Technologies occupied 3 floors of an innovative green building in Cambridge. Unlike the corporate sterility of places like TechFusion, NextWave's offices were vibrant and collaborative, with engineers and designers working in open spaces filled with plants and natural light. Darius greeted me warmly and gave me a tour. We're focused on developing AI solutions for environmental challenges, he explained. Everything from water conservation to carbon capture. It's impressive, I admitted. In his office, Darius got straight to the point. I know about your situation with TechFusion. News travels in tech circles. I stiffened. Then you know I have nothing to offer. On the contrary, he replied, you have everything to offer. TechFusion bought your patent, but they didn't buy you. The patent covers one specific implementation, but the brilliance behind it, that's still yours. For the first time, someone was separating my work from my worth, not dismissing my loss, but reminding me that I was more than one stolen idea. I'd like to offer you a position at NextWave, Darius continued. We need someone with your understanding of energy systems and algorithmic thinking. The salary is competitive, and you'd have freedom to pursue research that interests you. I hesitated. I don't know if I'm ready. Take the weekend to think about it, he suggested. But Cassandra, don't let what happened define your future. Sometimes our greatest innovations come after our greatest setbacks. I started at NextWave the following Monday. Initially, I worked on existing projects, helping optimize their renewable energy forecasting systems. But in the evenings and weekends, a new idea began to form. What if I could create something even better than my original algorithm? TechFusion owned my specific implementation, but they didn't own the entire concept of energy optimization. With my deeper understanding of the field and the lessons learned from my first attempt, I began sketching a new approach, one that would make my original algorithm look primitive by comparison. I started small, working nights in NextWave's lab with Darius's permission. Gradually, I assembled a small team of trusted colleagues who were excited by the potential. We called it Project Phoenix, a fitting name for something rising from the ashes of my previous work. Instead of just optimizing distribution like my original algorithm, Project Phoenix integrated production, storage, and consumption in a holistic system that learned and adapted in real time. It wasn't just an improvement. It was a completely new paradigm that would revolutionize how renewable energy systems functioned. 6 months into development, we had a working prototype that outperformed my original algorithm by 300% in simulations. This time, I took no chances with the intellectual property. NextWave's legal team helped me file multiple patents that protected not just the implementation, but the underlying approach from every conceivable angle. When we presented the prototype to Darius, his face lit up with excitement. This isn't just an energy optimizer, he said. This is the foundation for a completely new kind of energy infrastructure. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed myself to feel genuine hope. Phoenix wasn't just a recovery from what I had lost. It was a leap forward into something I never would have created without that painful experience, pushing me to rethink everything. As we refined the system, Darius approached me with a proposal that took my breath away. I think Phoenix deserves to be more than just a NextWave project, he said. I'd like to help you establish it as a separate company with you as the founder and CEO. NextWave would be your first investor and partner. I stared at him in disbelief. You'd help me start a competing company? He smiled. Not competing, complementary. Next wave could be your first customer and development partner. The world needs this technology, Cassandra. And you deserve to lead it. That night, I called Lily and told her everything. She screamed with excitement. I always knew you'd bounce back, Cass. This is just the beginning. For the first time in over a year, I felt like myself again, not the broken shell who had served coffee to Tech Fusion executives, but Cassandra Wilson, innovator and problem solver. The road ahead would be challenging, but I now had something I had lacked before: experience, wisdom, and a second chance to do things right. With Darius's backing, I incorporated Energy Sphere Incorporated in January, 18 months after the patent betrayal. Next Wave provided initial seed funding of $2 million in exchange for a 15% stake, with Darius joining my board of directors. Lily left her marketing job to become our chief operating officer, and we rented a small office space in a converted warehouse in Somerville. From coffee shop to CEO in 6 months, Lily joked as we set up our desks. This is going to make an amazing chapter in your biography someday. The first year was a whirlwind of development, testing, and refinement. We assembled a core team of 12 engineers and developers, most poached from larger firms with the promise of equity and the chance to work on truly revolutionary technology. Our pitch was simple but compelling. We weren't just improving energy efficiency, we were reimagining the entire relationship between generation, storage, and consumption. Our first breakthrough came when the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center agreed to implement a pilot program using Energy Sphere's technology in a small municipal grid. The results exceeded even our projections: 28% reduction in waste, 42% improvement in distribution efficiency, and a 17% decrease in overall costs. This could transform municipal energy infrastructure nationwide, reported the Boston Globe in its coverage of the pilot. Energy Sphere system may represent the missing link between renewable generation capacity and practical implementation. As word spread through industry channels, interest in our technology exploded. Venture capitalist Grace Morgan reached out personally after reading about our pilot program. I want to lead your series of funding round, she stated during our first meeting. This technology solves problems that the entire industry has been struggling with for decades. With Grace's help, we secured $12 million in funding that allowed us to expand our team, enhance our infrastructure, and accelerate development. Energy Sphere grew to 30 employees, and we moved to larger offices in Cambridge's tech corridor. Just as everything was gaining momentum, the first legal notice arrived from Tech Fusion's attorneys: cease and desist. The letter demanded in bold capital letters: Energy Sphere's technology constitutes a direct infringement on intellectual property owned by Tech Fusion Corporation. I had been expecting this. Tech Fusion had paid a mere $10,000 for technology now estimated to be worth millions. They weren't about to let me create something better without a fight. They're trying to scare us, our lead counsel, Veronica Diaz, explained during an emergency board meeting. They know our technology is fundamentally different from the patented algorithm they purchased, but they're hoping we'll settle rather than fight. What are our options? I asked. We can either negotiate a licensing agreement with them, essentially paying them for the right to operate in this space, or we can fight this in court and establish definitively that our technology is distinct from their patent. The board was divided. Licensing would be faster and less risky, but would validate Tech Fusion's claims and cost us millions in ongoing fees. Fighting would be expensive and time-consuming, but would establish our independence once and for all. What do you want to do, Cassandra? Darius asked. This is your company and your vision. I thought about my parents, about how they had dismissed my work as computer doodling before selling it for a pittance. I thought about the Tech Fusion executive ordering coffee, casually discussing my algorithm on the phone while I served him. We fight, I decided. Energy Sphere is built on original innovation that goes far beyond the technology Tech Fusion acquired. I won't pay them for the right to use my own ideas. The legal battle lasted 11 months and cost us nearly $3 million. Tech Fusion's lawyers argued that our system was merely an iteration of the original algorithm. Our team demonstrated the fundamental differences in approach, architecture, and implementation. The case culminated in a 5-day hearing where I took the stand to explain the technical distinctions between the two technologies. Hour after hour, TechFusion's attorneys tried to trip me up, to make me admit that Energy Sphere was built on the foundation of my earlier work. Miss Wilson, their lead attorney asked on the final day, isn't it true that you began developing this new algorithm as a direct response to losing your original patent? I met his gaze steadily. Yes, it is. So, you admit that there is a direct connection between the two technologies? There's a connection between me losing my first child's teddy bear and buying them a different one, I replied. That doesn't make them the same teddy bear. Energy Sphere's technology represents a completely new approach that I would never have developed if I still had access to my original algorithm. Sometimes limitations foster the greatest innovations. 2 weeks later, the judge ruled in our favor. The court finds that Energy Sphere's technology constitutes a novel and distinct innovation that does not infringe upon TechFusion's patent rights, the decision stated. While both technologies address similar problems in energy optimization, they do so through fundamentally different technical approaches. The victory changed everything. With the legal cloud lifted, investors flocked to our Series B funding round. We secured $50 million at a valuation of $300 million, allowing us to expand internationally and accelerate our commercial deployments. Major utility companies began implementing our technology across their networks. The city of Austin, Texas, became our first large-scale municipal client, followed by Portland, Oregon, and then Denver, Colorado. Each successful implementation generated data that further improved our algorithms, creating a virtuous cycle of enhancement. Business magazines began taking notice. Fast Company named Energy Sphere one of its most innovative companies in the energy sector. Forbes included me in its 30 Under 30 list for energy innovation. Technology Review featured our system in a cover story titled The AI Revolution in Clean Energy. As our third year of operations approached, we prepared for an initial public offering. Investment banks competed fiercely for the opportunity to lead our IPO, with preliminary valuations ranging from $800 million to $1.2 billion. Can you believe this? Lily asked as we reviewed the prospectus in my office late one night. 3 years ago you were making lattes and crying in the bathroom. Now you're about to become a billionaire. I shook my head in disbelief. It doesn't feel real sometimes. Well, get used to it, she replied, because according to these projections, Energy Sphere is going to be worth more than TechFusion within 5 years. The morning of our IPO, I stood on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange, surrounded by our team. When the opening bell rang, Energy Sphere stock began trading at $72 per share, well above our projected range. By closing, it had risen to $89, giving us a market capitalization of just over $1 billion. That evening, as we celebrated in a private room at an upscale Manhattan restaurant, my phone lit up with a text from an unfamiliar number. Congratulations on your success, Cassandra. We always believed in you. Love, Mom and Dad. I stared at the screen, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. After 3 years of silence, now they wanted to reconnect, just as my company hit $1 billion valuation. The timing was hardly subtle. Everything okay? Lily asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. They've found me. Lily's eyes narrowed. Block the number. I should, I agreed. But part of me wants to face them, to finally close that chapter properly. Just be careful, she warned. People who betrayed you once will do it again. I nodded, tucking my phone away and rejoining the celebration. This should have been the happiest day of my life, the culmination of years of struggle and innovation. Instead, I felt a shadow looming, the unresolved pain of my parents' betrayal and the certainty that they weren't done trying to insert themselves into my life. I was right. This was just the beginning of their campaign to claim a share of the success they had once dismissed as worthless. 2 weeks after our IPO, with Energy Sphere stock continuing to climb and our market capitalization approaching $1.3 billion, I received an email from my father. The subject line read simply, "We should talk. Your mother and I are so proud of what you've accomplished," he wrote. "We always knew you would do great things with your talent. We would love to meet for lunch when you're back in Seattle. There's so much to catch up on. No mention of selling my patent. No acknowledgement of the betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. Just a casual invitation as if we were a normal family who had simply lost touch due to busy schedules. I forwarded the email to my therapist, Dr. Rivera, whom I had been seeing regularly since the early days of Energy Sphere. Her response was measured. How do you feel about this contact? What would you hope to gain from such a meeting? Good questions. Part of me wanted to ignore them forever. Another part craved closure, or perhaps, if I'm being honest, wanted to show them exactly what they had thrown away. After much consideration, I agreed to meet them at a restaurant in downtown Seattle during my next business trip. I chose a public place to keep emotions in check and told Lily where I would be. Want me to come with you? She offered. I can sit at the bar and monitor for signs of distress. I laughed despite my anxiety. I'll be okay, but stay by your phone. My parents arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, already seated when I walked in. My mother had dyed her gray hair back to brown, and my father had lost weight. They both stood when they saw me, smiles plastered on their faces like they were greeting a celebrity rather than their daughter. Cassandra. My mother moved in for a hug that I sidestepped, offering a handshake instead. Her smile faltered but quickly returned. You look wonderful. Success agrees with you. We sat, and a waiter immediately appeared to take our orders. The small talk was excruciating, comments about the weather, how nice the restaurant was, how they had followed my career with interest. Finally, when our food arrived, my father cleared his throat. We've been thinking a lot about family lately, about legacy. Have you? I replied neutrally, cutting into my salmon. We always believed in you, Cassandra, he continued. Even when we didn't understand your work, we knew you were special. I set down my fork. Is that why you sold my patent without my knowledge? Because you believed in me so much. My mother reached across the table for my hand, which I pulled back. We made a mistake, she admitted. We didn't understand what we were doing. You understood exactly what you were doing, I countered. You used a medical power of attorney to sell my intellectual property for $10,000. Then you lied about using it for Jason's wedding. My father shifted uncomfortably. We've had some financial difficulties these past few years. Jason's business ventures haven't panned out, and the economy's been tough. And there it was, the real reason for this reunion. Not reconciliation, but money. What exactly do you want? I asked directly. They exchanged glances before my father spoke. We thought, given your success, you might consider helping family. Perhaps some shares in your company or a position on your board. Your father has extensive business experience that could be valuable. I nearly choked on my water. A position on my board, the board of the company I built after you sold my original technology for a fraction of its worth? We're your parents, my mother said, as if that explained everything. We gave you life. We raised you. Families support each other. You didn't support me, I said quietly. You dismissed my work as computer doodling. You used my college fund for Jason's sports camp. You sold my patent without my consent. That's not support. That's exploitation. My father's expression hardened. We made sacrifices for you your entire life. Now that you're successful, you owe us. I owe you nothing, I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. And I think this lunch is over. As I stood to leave, my mother grabbed my wrist. We're thinking of suing Tech Fusion, she said desperately. For undervaluing your patent. We could split the settlement. I stared at her in disbelief. You're unbelievable, both of you. Outside the restaurant, I called Lily, struggling to maintain my composure. They wanted money, I told her, and board positions. And now they're threatening to sue Tech Fusion, as if that wouldn't drag me into another legal nightmare. Come home, she said simply. These people don't deserve another minute of your time. But the situation escalated. My parents began calling my office daily. They showed up at industry events where I was speaking. They contacted journalists with inside stories about how they had nurtured my early talent. Most disturbingly, they reached out to board members and investors, claiming they had been instrumental in the development of the technology that became Energy Sphere. After consulting with our legal team, I reluctantly agreed to one final meeting, this time at my parents' house, with my attorney present. I wanted to end this harassment once and for all. Their house looked shabbier than I remembered, with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn. Inside, evidence of financial strain was everywhere: worn furniture, outdated electronics, stacks of bills on the counter. My brother Jason was there too, looking uncomfortable as he sat in the corner of the living room. He nodded awkwardly when I entered but didn't speak. My attorney, Marcus Llewellyn, laid out the terms of the agreement. We had prepared a one-time payment of $100,000 in exchange for a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a commitment to cease all contact with me, my company, and anyone associated with Energy Sphere. 100,000, my father exploded. Your company is worth over $1 billion. We deserve at least 10 million plus ongoing royalties. You have no legal claim to any of my success, I replied calmly. This offer is purely to end the harassment and move forward. Take it or leave it. My mother began to cry theatrically. After everything we've done for you, how can you be so cold to your own parents? Something in me snapped. Years of suppressed hurt and rage boiled to the surface. What exactly have you done for me? Belittled my achievements, stolen my opportunities, betrayed my trust. Tell me one thing you've done that wasn't ultimately self-serving. The room fell silent except for my mother's sniffling. To my surprise, it was Jason who finally spoke. She's right, he said quietly. All heads turned toward him. You've done the same to me, he continued, looking at our parents. You pushed me into sports when I wanted to study music. You pressured me into business ventures I knew would fail because they matched your image of success. You've never supported either of us unless it somehow benefited you. My father's face reddened. That's not true. We sacrificed everything for you too. No, Jason said, standing up. You sacrificed us for your vision of what we should be. He turned to me. I'm sorry, Cass. I should have stood up for you years ago. I was too caught up in being the golden child to see what they were doing to you. I stared at my brother, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. He hadn't been my adversary. He had been another victim of our parents' manipulation. Marcus cleared his throat. The offer stands for 24 hours. After that, we'll pursue restraining orders and consider legal action for defamation and harassment. My parents glared at us both as we walked out together. In the driveway, Jason turned to me. I really am sorry, Cass, for everything. It wasn't your fault, I told him. We were both just playing the roles they assigned us. Maybe someday, he said hesitantly, when all this is settled, we could get coffee, try to be actual siblings. I nodded. I'd like that. As I drove away, I felt a weight lifting, not just the immediate stress of my parents' harassment, but the deeper burden of seeking validation from people incapable of giving it. I was finally free to define success on my own terms, without the shadow of their approval hanging over me. My parents accepted the settlement the next day. I never spoke to them again, though I did begin a cautious rebuilding of my relationship with Jason. The chapter of my life dominated by their betrayal was finally closed, allowing me to focus fully on the future I was creating, not just for myself, but for the world through Energy Sphere's transformative technology. 1 year after the confrontation with my parents, Energy Sphere had grown beyond my wildest dreams. Our market capitalization reached $3 billion as our technology was implemented in energy grids across North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. We had expanded to over 200 employees with offices in Boston, San Francisco, London, and Singapore. More important than the financial success was the impact we were making. Independent studies confirmed that our systems reduced carbon emissions by 22% in implemented areas while increasing renewable energy utilization by 35%. We were actually changing the world, one grid at a time. On the anniversary of our IPO, I launched the Wilson Innovation Foundation, committing $50 million to support young innovators from challenging backgrounds. The foundation provided scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding for students with promising ideas but limited resources. I was lucky enough to find supporters when I needed them most, I explained at the launch event. Not everyone has that opportunity. We want to be the bridge between brilliant ideas and the resources needed to bring them to life. The foundation became a passion project for me, a way to transform my painful experiences into something positive. I personally reviewed scholarship applications and often mentored recipients directly. Many reminded me of myself at that age, full of innovative ideas but facing obstacles that had nothing to do with their abilities. Around this time, I also established healthier boundaries with my extended family. While I maintained no contact with my parents, my relationship with Jason gradually improved. He had finally pursued his passion for music, teaching piano at a community arts center and seeming happier than I had ever known him to be. "They're still angry," he told me during one of our monthly dinners. "They talk about you like you betrayed them, not the other way around. Do you think they'll ever understand what they did?" I asked. Jason shook his head. "They're incapable of that kind of self-reflection. In their minds, they're always the heroes of the story." I had come to the same conclusion through therapy with Dr. Rivera. Some people cannot acknowledge their harmful actions because it would shatter their self-image. My parents would likely go to their graves believing they were victims of an ungrateful daughter rather than facing the truth of their betrayal. This understanding was crucial to my healing. I stopped hoping for an apology I would never receive and instead focused on building the life and relationships I deserved. One such relationship was with Marcus Llewellyn, who had started as my attorney during the parental settlement but had become something more. Our professional relationship had gradually evolved into friendship and eventually romance. Unlike anyone I had dated before, Marcus understood both my drive for innovation and the personal traumas that had shaped me. "You never have to choose between your work and being understood," he told me one evening as we walked along the Charles River. "The right partner enhances both." Through Marcus, I learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness but strength. I could share my fears and doubts without being diminished by them. This emotional security allowed me to lead Energy Sphere with greater confidence and clarity. On a crisp October morning, Professor Alan Morgan visited our Cambridge headquarters. Now in his 70s, he had continued his research at MIT, inspiring new generations of engineers and scientists. "I always knew you would do extraordinary things," he said as I showed him our latest developments. "But even I couldn't have predicted this level of success. I couldn't have done it without your early support," I told him. "You were the first person who truly believed in my potential." Later that week, I announced the establishment of the Morgan Research Center at MIT, funded by a $20 million grant from Energy Sphere. The center would focus on developing next-generation renewable energy technologies with an emphasis on accessibility for developing nations. "This is how we create lasting change," I explained to our board. "Not just by building a successful company, but by nurturing the innovations that will come after us." As Energy Sphere continued to grow, I found myself increasingly drawn to the mentorship aspects of my work. The technical challenges still excited me, but helping young innovators navigate their own journeys brought a different kind of fulfillment. At a scholarship event in Chicago, I met 12-year-old Zoe Henderson, a brilliant young girl who had created an algorithm to optimize water usage in urban farming systems. She reminded me so much of myself at that age, enthusiastic, detail-oriented, and slightly awkward in social situations. "People don't really get what I'm trying to do," she confided after her presentation. "My parents think it's just a weird hobby." "I understand completely," I told her. "But never stop pursuing what fascinates you. The world needs your unique perspective." After the event, I arranged for Zoe to join a special mentorship program through our foundation, connecting her with engineers who could help develop her ideas. I became her personal mentor, scheduling monthly video calls to check on her progress and provide guidance. Being for Zoe what Professor Morgan had been for me completed a circle in my life. The pain of my parents' betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for a different kind of success, one measured not just in dollars or technological breakthroughs, but in lives improved and potential unlocked. As I reflect on my journey from that devastating Thanksgiving dinner to where I am today, I realize that losing my original patent was paradoxically the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to create something better, to build with intentionality rather than happenstance, and to define success on my own terms. The greatest lesson I've learned is that our worth is never determined by others' assessment of our value. My parents sold my silly patent for $10,000 because they couldn't see its potential, or mine. Their limited vision nearly crushed me, but ultimately it liberated me to exceed even my own expectations. Today, when young innovators ask me for advice, I tell them, create as if no one is watching, but protect your work as if everyone is. Trust your vision, especially when others can't see it yet. And remember that setbacks often lead to your greatest breakthroughs if you're brave enough to continue. The journey from betrayal to billion-dollar success wasn't easy or straight. It required resilience, support from true friends, and the courage to keep creating even when it seemed pointless. But that's the thing about innovation, sometimes the most valuable discoveries come after you've lost everything and have to reimagine what's possible.